Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Amigos Club. We're going to get started here in just a minute, as today is Ask a Parenting Coach Day. So, just waiting for Rodrigo, and hopefully, maybe a couple other parenting coaches might come into the room today to help us out. If you have a question that you're thinking about that you'd like to ask, please do. Make sure you have a bio filled out. Make sure you raise your hand. We'll bring you up on stage to ask your question. And for right now, give me just a moment. I'm going to do some the back end stuff and we'll get started. All right, still waiting for my moderator, but I am going to go ahead and get started here today. Welcome to the Amigos Club, you guys. My name is Christina Campos. I'm founder of The Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school-age children turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I do that by parenting courses, online coaching, and more specifically, the app that is sitting above my head. This app it's free to download. It's available on Apple and Android. It has in there lots of different topics for your parenting needs. So as your child grows, my philosophy is that things get tough, they change, your kids are changing, and in order to keep up, we kind of need to be one step ahead as parents. Well, busy parents don't have time to read books and go to seminars and all those things. So, what I did is I created an app for you that allows you to, whenever you have an issue, go into the app, check out the topic that you need, and it gives you like step one tips of what you might be going on. For example, right now there's a new video out about narcissism in children. And so if you think that your child might be turning into a narcissist, or maybe you have a co-parent that is a narcissist, or a mother or a father that is a narcissist. What I talk about is narcissism hereditary? Can your child get that from people in your past? And so that's a conversation that I put into the Impactful Parent app above my head. And you could check that video out. And if you think that your child's a narcissist, it just also tells you like step one, this is what you're going to do. This is where you would go for help. And that's kind of how it works. And you can do that with a ton of different topics, whether it's ADHD, whether it's just my kid's procrastinating and I don't know how to get them to stop, or my kid is starting to become disrespectful. Like, there are a whole bunch of topics inside of that app. So I encourage you to download it because it's free and you can't go wrong. So might as
And there's Rodrigo. Hello.
Hey y'all. Hey Christina, what's going on?
Good. We're just ready to get started. I was introducing myself. And yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself, Rodrigo, too.
My name is Rodrigo Bravo. I do a whole bunch of things. My two main things that I do, I am a certified mediator here in the state of Texas. I practice locally in Houston and in San Antonio, Texas. And I also am a co-parenting coach consultant. I help parents either, freshly off of a separation or are just having trouble with a already co-parenting journey that they're progressing through, kind of get through that. What I'm saying, using my experience, my education, and really my enthusiasm to make sure that I try to help folks, because at the end of the day, it's all about the kids. The better relationship that we have, or that we're able to manage with our co-parent parenting partner, the better that relationship is with our kids. I know that from firsthand experience. I have two boys, two moms, and both of my boys were on opposite. My boys were on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as that co-parenting relationship was with their moms. Where one I had a fantastic co-parenting experience, and the other I had a not so fantastic co-parenting experience. So using all that, I really I've developed these tools, these modules, and more than anything, these this understanding of what it really takes to be a good co-parent. And it's something that I never thought I'd be doing. And but now looking back at all the struggles, the trials that I went through, and also all the celebrations that I had, I realized that that's kind of that is my purpose, and that's really my why. And I do that for the kids. I really want folks to have good relationships because it'll help out in the long run with their kids. So that's why I'm up here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And I'd like to introduce Dali. Dali, go ahead and introduce yourself too. Welcome to the stage, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So, my name is Dali. I live in Maryland, but I help parents pretty much anywhere because I do it virtually. I specialize, I'm a parenting coach, and I specialize in bullying education for the parents and a lot of times for the teachers or educators. And I do this because I noticed years ago that there's a gap of communication and understanding about bullying, and it happens everywhere. I have so many parents that sometimes they think, oh, well, my child is going to private school, so they'll be fine. Or, oh, my child goes to a Catholic school, or my child goes to a very small school, so that's not going to happen. And then they come back asking for help, and they're shocked that it happened at their kid's school. And a lot of times parents don't know how to advocate for their kids aside from telling a teacher or their school principal, but there's a lot of politics in schools, and there are specific ways that you can advocate for children and get really good results. So I teach parents not just how to advocate for their kids, but how to educate their children at home, because schools, they have anti-bullying programs, but they're not in depth, and they're also, most of the times, they call it, like, we have a school assembly to talk about bullying at the beginning of the school year, or sometimes they do it until something major happens, and so they'll go ahead and start that type of education again. So I offer education about bullying awareness and prevention through live webinars, my podcast, my YouTube channel. I have a workbook, a blog, and coaching and consulting. So that's what I do and why I do it. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to have these guys next to me today, as today is going to be more of a discussion. So please raise your hand, make sure you have a bio filled out, and ask your question, because today, instead of having a particular topic like we normally do, we're just going to do Ask a Parenting Coach for Help Day. So you can come up. We want you to ask your question. We'll do our best to help you. Keep in mind that, we're getting a very small snippet of what might be happening in your home, but we'll do our best to still assist you in any way we can, as maybe we can give you some guidance, a few things that you can go to, where you might go get additional help if needed, or maybe we can even solve the problem depending on what you have going. So please feel free to raise your hand and come up, because that's how this room today is going to work. And my moderators, Rodrigo and Dali, if you don't mind, would you please help me monitor the chat also if anybody asks any questions in the chat?
Absolutely.
I will play chat monitor, no problem.
Yay! Here we go. And welcome, Jason, to the stage. Jason has a podcast. He comes up often. Man, he also gives really great parenting advice. But do you have a particular question or anything you want to ask today, Jason? Or are you going to help us answer questions?
I can do both, but I want to start with just myself and a question. So here's the situation. I have a 14-year-old daughter who she's been playing a game between me and her mom, and me and her mom necessarily don't really communicate well. And when we try to, it's someone walks away kind of irritated, or they kind of just overstep their boundaries. And one of my biggest problems is my daughter keeps asking me if she can go home early on Sunday night, even though she can stay the night. and she does homeschool anyways, or independent study. And I'm just like, I'm sick and tired of being asked on Sundays, like, hey, can I go home early? And I'm really trying to address the emotional issues. What is it about going home to mom right now that doesn't allow you to be here in your mind? So, and she just kind of gives me the blank stare, like, you just don't understand. And I'm like, hey, it's up to you on how we resolve this between you and I. But going home and asking every Sunday, it can be problematic, because then I feel like I'm divided, because I'll be with me and my fiance and my 4-year old outside of her, and I want her to be included, but it's just so hard. But constantly I hear the undermining of the other parent, like, you should just let her go. And I'm like, I don't want to be rude, but it's like, at the same time, I want my daughter to value the experience, because when she takes off to college, it's just like, hey, it's really on your own. And I try not to remind her of that or give her a consequential. So, all right, what's your guys' thoughts on that?
All right, guys, you want me to go first? Do you guys want to
You got it.
go? So my first thought is that people in general, not just your daughter, take the path of least resistance always. And so what happens for a lot is that she's probably, generally seeking the soft parent, the parent that probably might not have some of the rules that she doesn't like, maybe that kind of thing. And with that in mind, she is eager maybe to go back to that environment because she feels like she has more freedom there. It's sad because she probably loves, and we all know that the structure that you give Jason is probably a lot better for her. But again, we seek the path of least resistance. So I would, I would continue to hold strong. That's my personal feeling to that. I would continue to hold strong and continue to say, I really need you to stay your whole time. One time going back, early, I get that, but I really enjoy my time with you. It means a lot to me, and start getting really personal with her, which I actually know that you do. So how does she respond when you are real with her and saying, I just really value this time with you. Why do you want to leave me?
I did that for a while. I asked exactly that question, exactly that way. And I started observing, and it's like, it's not about so much he said, she said, but the behavior of the other household. Like my ex, she's now married. And the one part I have such a hard time with is that she'll always talk to me, well, me and my husband decided. I'm like, oh, since when is he included in the decisions, when it's something you need to talk to me first before you and him? Because it's like, if you're not relaying me the message till late, then it's kind of like you've already defeated the purpose of communication. So, you know, it just feels like a lot of times I'm having to be the diplomatic one, like, no, you're not going to go home early. You're just staying, and just work it out the best you can. If you can't, it'll be over in less than 24 hours. It's not
Yeah.
forever. And just, like you said, so it is remaining firm, but it is exhausting, because like I have to constantly hear like things. And then when my ex gets in trouble, it's like, I need you to talk to her. And it's like, wait a minute, why is it escalating to I need to talk to her? It's like, let me know the problem so we can talk to her, because you're not dealing diligently with your issues. So now you're shoving it off to me instead of let us both talk to her. And she just can't get over that's the hardest part. It's part of her pride, but she's a good mom inside. She's caring, she's very supportive in a lot of areas, but when it comes to, like, she can't handle it because she works so intensively as a nurse. It's like, you can't just expect to work 12 hours a day and then connect with your kid. It's a hands-on thing until they're out of your house, in my opinion.
It is. I have this saying that if you are being an impactful parent, you are exhausted. Like, because being a really good parent is so tiring. It's emotional. It is really intentional, and it just takes a lot of energy. So when you're tired at the end of the day from your parenting, it must mean that you're doing something right. So keep that in mind. I don't know if Rodrigo, do you have any tips for how to work with your co-parent there with trying to get them on the same page?
Yeah. What I've experienced a lot is just a lot of miscommunication from the parents, right? Not saying that that's the case in this particular example, but one of the first things that I always find is there's miscommunication about intent. Why am I doing this, right? And so, for example, let's take an app, right? And one parent doesn't want the child to have the app, and the other one doesn't care, they have the app. At that point, the communication is what's very key among both parents, right? What are we communicating? Why do we have these intentions of either letting our child take this app or not download this app? So that's the first thing I would suggest. Communication is always the most important thing. Don't let the child be the driver of the communication. A lot of times we allow our kids to say, well, my mom lets me do that over there, you know what I'm saying? Why don't you let me, because you don't even know if the mom actually allows the child to actually do that. I've gotten caught in that predicament, back in the past, where my son says one thing, I'm like, really? And then I call up my co-parent, my son's mom, and she's like, I never said that, So you never know what's going on. So always the direct communication is what's best on there. And then the second thing I would do is, find out what your red lines are. Find out what's really, really important. Co-parenting a lot of times is negotiation.
It
Okay.
is
It,
big
it, re-
time.
it really is. Yeah. And you know this, you definitely know this, Jason. I've heard you share your story before. It takes so much negotiation, right? And it is exhausting because you feel like you're losing this and you're doing that, this and that. But when we negotiate, we allow folks to know what our intentions really are. Maybe you don't really care about the app. You just care what she's doing on the app. Hey, maybe she can be on the app, but can you supervise her? Can you make sure that if she's on the app, that she's not doing something silly, or are there blocks that you can put on the app if that's what you're worried about, or XYZ, right? Maybe that's what the real crux of the issue is, and not exactly the app. But I think that's what's really important, that when we talk to each other, that we were able to negotiate. And of course, before you can negotiate, you have to have that line of communication. And that starts with transparency, being honest, and making sure that you always put the needs of the child first. So there's a lot of little building blocks there, a lot of stepping stones, if you will, but it all starts with communication and being transparent.
Right. And and I just to even piggyback on that, it's like even the phones, like for me, I didn't want my daughter to have a phone until she was 17. And her mom got one anyway. And it's just like when there's problems, and I've seen, I mean, being a former prosecutor and seeing how kids fall into these traps, leads into so many things. And me, I was absolutely against smartphones. I don't think any kid should have one until they're 17 or 18, almost ready to be an adult, because in the long run, it's like once they're in that portal, and that's what I call it, there's a billion different ways to go and a billion different teachers and attention getters. And it's just like that's as our parents, it's hard because one parent say, well, it's fine. You're digging too deep. And the other one's like, no, wait a minute. If I know my own addictions and my own issues and I'm doing this, I need your support. But they do it anyway, and then you're just like, okay, where's the battlegrounds? Where are the lines I don't cross and they don't cross? So yeah, I feel you on that.
Yeah, I
I,
can share one last thing, if you don't mind, Christina, really quick. I've been in those positions, and I want to share this just to kind of. I know we're talking about apps, and I don't mean to say it's trivial. Okay, it's not trivial at all. I know those things are very important to various degrees to folks, right? For me, one of the most important things that I had to kind of negotiate and then just eventually say, you know what, you're right, was when my son was diagnosed with ADHD. I was very anti-medicine. I didn't want, or anti-medication. I'm sorry. I didn't want my son on that. I said, man, there's got to be another way, and this and that. And it wasn't until my son's mom and my partner at the time both talked to me and said, we really need to get him, on something, because now his outbursts are starting to label him at school. And they explained it to me. I'm a former educator, but I wasn't aware of some of the things they told me, and this and that. Talking about the roads, right, Jason, that you're talking about, these roads, these the portals that you end up going to. My son was on the verge of doing that because of the labeling and all that. And so, yeah, I decided, okay, well, let's start them off with this and do that, this and that. And so that's a whole nother story. Eventually, he was off the medication by his own choice, and we developed plans around it and things to do to make sure that he's dealing managing his symptoms and what's going on. At the end of the day, the bottom line is communication and negotiation, and you have to have a good understanding of that. And I hope, at the end of the day, that when parents do get to that place, that at the end of the day they're always negotiating for what's best for their child. That's really the most important thing. If you to the folks out there, the parents, everybody, myself included, because I used to do this stuff too. When we live from a place of ego or lack of control or anything like that, man, it just sets it up for a bad result. And the only person that really gets affected at the end of the day is your child.
So powerful. Thank you. Dali, is there anything you wanted to add, or should I go to Mabatu?
I just want to add something, and because I agree with everything that you both have said, and something that because initially Jason asked, he mentioned about she wants to go home early. Your child wants to go home early to her mom. Um, and my daughter, my 14-year-old was listening, and she had a really good point. She said, well, maybe the reason has nothing to do with him. Maybe the reason is because there's something at home that she wants. Like, for example, it might be that her friends are there, or maybe she has a secret boyfriend, or maybe it's a pet, or maybe there's something at some amenities around that she enjoys more. So I guess her point was ask exactly, just keep asking. And one of the things that I have done that I read a while back, I can't even remember what book it was, but asking why at least 7 times. Because the more you ask a child, like, oh, well, why do you feel that way? Or, okay, well, why do you think you feel antsy? Or what is it that makes you feel, whatever. And the more you keep asking the why, you are actually helping them recognize what's at the root of that why. And it can be frustrating, like Christina said, it's exhausting sometimes, but that's our job, right? And if you want to get that find out that solution or find out what the root of that problem is, then you have to do that hard work so that you can implement a solution. And also always include your child's opinion, or take into consideration how they want to solve the issue. That way it's a team effort and they feel validated, and that you do care about creating that solution with them. That's all I have.
Yes, collaborating with your child for the solution is awesome. Um, Make sure I'm going to reset the room really quick. Today is Ask a Parenting Coach Day. We are up here to just ask or answer any questions that you might have. So please feel free to raise your hand. Make sure you have a bio filled out so that we know that you're a real person. And yeah, come on up and ask your question. Keep in mind, we only have a very small snippet of what might be happening in your home, but we will do our very best. Welcome to the stage, Mubatu. How would you like to contribute today?
Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you, everyone on the stage and in the room. Boy, what a needed conversation this is. For me, just speaking generally in my own observations and in my own life too, as a child when I was a little child, um, and now I'm a single mom. My son is 36 years old. Um, I have come to the realization that a lot of the issues that I had with my own mother, not being able to communicate or open up my life to her, even though I was maybe 40 at the time. She's passed now, and I could see her longing to be around me and for me to open up to her. And then I saw that in my own son too, which is what caused me to change my paradigm shift, is asking myself the question, is my child, does my child like me? because just because a child likes me, loves me, does not mean they like me. I loved my mom, but I found that I didn't necessarily like her. And by like, that means I was not seeking her out in the house to go sit with her, to watch TV with her, to chat with her, have a coffee and sit down and, that kind of stuff. And so, in my observation, I see that when a child is not comfortable with you as a parent, this is general now. I mean, there's a lot of layers. If I have to go back to what Jason said, there's a lot of layers when there is when there's co-parenting involved, when there's blended families involved. There is just a whole lot of layers. So that is separate. What I'm talking about is, if everything is equal, there's no other influences outside, like in co-parenting situations, is to ask myself the question: does my child like me? Does my child feel comfortable with me? Because it is when they like me that they actually are able to open up to me, and I'm able to have an influence in their life. When a child doesn't like you, this is a child who's going to avoid you, wants to sit in their room for however long, come down and just eat and not, but they won't seek you in the house. I heard someone said, does your child see you smile when they walk into a room? And so that whole comfort level that a child has with us, um, is really on us as as parents. For me, I found that it is on us. So I always look at myself: is in what ways am I causing this child not to be comfortable with me? In what ways am I causing this child not to like me? And then try to address that, because I find that, a child who's not comfortable with me is a child I have lost. I'm done talking. Thank you.
Thank you for that ad, Mubatu. Very powerful. If you're enjoying this conversation or know somebody who could join us and use some of this help, please make sure that you share the room down below. Put this room into the hallway so we can get some more parents in here who might need to hear this. Adding on to what Mubatu was saying, if your child is hiding and doing a lot of withdrawal, keep in mind it definitely could be what Mubatu is talking about, that they're trying to avoid you. That is also a sign of a lot of other different issues that might be happening. So make sure you explore and ask those 7 why questions that Dali was referring to earlier that you want to keep asking. Dig a little bit deeper. But if you are concerned that your child doesn't like you and you want them to like you, step 1 of that is really taking an interest in what your child likes. And even if you have to fake it in the beginning, because a lot of us do, for example, for a while there, I had a child that was very interested into the video games, and I'm not really a video game person. I love games, but not this particular type of video game that he was playing, and he was really into it. But in order to get that connection with him, I had to just suck it up and sit with him and ask him questions about his video game. What are you building? Why do you like it? Sit with them while they play. Things like that go a long way with a kid, that even if you're faking it till you make it, it shows that you're putting that genuine interest into what they like. And I think that's a common mistake that a lot of parents make, is they're just like, that video game, it's stupid, and they don't want to have anything to do with it, which is okay to have that opinion. But if you're trying to bond with your child, start with taking in real, true, intentional interest in the things that they also like. Start asking
Can I
questions.
can I add
I'm
something?
about to go.
Yeah, I just want to also add
Mhm.
something. That is great. That point of showing interest in what they are doing. I would add also that respecting the child. Because often, depending also on your upbringing, I was raised in a children are to be seen and not to be heard, and so this whole thing of an adult showing me respect was not something that I understood, that I experienced. And so I realized too that part of my child liking me is if I respect them. Before I demand them to respect me, I need to respect them, to model that respect. And another one is am I too proud to ask for forgiveness? So to always be mindful to, if I feel that there was something that I could have done differently, to just humble myself and go and ask for forgiveness. Because I know that growing up, if I had had my mother or my parents ask for forgiveness or even say I'm sorry about something, boy, that would have gone such a long, long way in me being comfortable and liking them. So I wanted to add those two things. Thank you.
Exactly. Saying that you're sorry to your child does not make you weak. It does not make you a parent that is a pushover or anything like that. In fact, it makes you stronger. It makes you approachable. It makes you humanized, and it allows your child to finally open up to you. I see Jason has something to say, and then we're going to go over to Celeste.
Yeah, I just want to say, just to piggyback on all that, to me, I don't necessarily worry about whether my child likes me or not at this point, because between like 9 and 18, especially I'm a dad of girls, and what I've seen, I have a 25, a 14, and a 4. What I experienced before is, don't worry so much exactly whether they like you, is just being, can you be present and not compartmentalize? Like, don't have your phone open in front of you or watching TV. Turn off the television or turn off the sounds. And so when you're talking to your kid, it's like, hey, we need to have a family powwow, as I call it. You know what? We're going to talk, and here's what we're going to talk about. So don't bring your phone to the table. The way that I lead my table is the way that I lead my household. Everyone's welcome to enjoy the provisions, but we all have to put in our part. So when it comes to liking, in my opinion, it's a touch and go, because there's things where I like my parents as an adult, but I didn't like them as a kid, you know and considering the times, it's, you're leading doesn't mean that you're just giving orders. It's actually offering the diplomacy of the power of listening and saying less than necessary so that they can ask you questions. Because that's one thing that I noticed about my 14-year-old. She asks me questions based on what she thinks I'm going to think or how I'm going to act. And that's where kids are like, they're playing mini chess with you, whether they like you or not. They're playing mini chess in a way where they're saying, okay, I'm willing to give up this move, but I want to see what you really think. So sometimes you feel like a yo-yo, and it's like, look, I love playing games too, but here it is. This is our responsibility for both of us. I'm here to help you become a great adult at this point, especially for my 14-year-old. Like, I'm helping you to become a good woman, and however you wish to live your life, I hope I've given you enough strength and wisdom or knowledge to where you can have a benefit from that. And that's it.
This is such a great conversation. Thank you so much for contributing, you guys. I'd like to go over to Celeste. She's been waiting patiently. Celeste, welcome to the stage. Do you have a question for us?
Yes, thank you so much. So the question I have is, what advice do you have for parents who want to reset expectations around rules? And a little background information. I feel with the pandemic, for the first year of the pandemic, it was survival mode in terms of balancing um, school on Zoom and like getting my own work done and all of this. And I feel like we've gotten into some very bad patterns and habits around screen time, around TV. And part of it, I really feel it was survival. Working crazy hours, having additional workload, and all of that. And so I just feel our family needs like a reset with some rules and expectations. And what advice would you give around that?
Go ahead, you guys, if you want. I feel like I'm talking a lot. So if you guys want me
I
to say, go ahead.
Yeah, I would
uh,
say I would say this is a great opportunity to do a good little reset, and invite your kids to participate in the rule making. I've actually had to do this with my boys. We moved into a home, a while back or whatnot, and it was a new home, and it had a game room up on top. And I invited them over, and I said, "Okay, look, got to set some ground rules. What do y'all think are fair rules?" And they were stunned, right? They were like, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "Well, do y'all want to eat up here?" They're like, yeah, 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 yeah. I said, okay, well then how often are you going to clean? And they don't like to clean, right? So then they said, okay, well maybe we don't want to eat up here, right? And then I slowly told them, I go, yeah, because if you leave food up here, there's going to be ants. They're going to do this, do that, da, da, da. At the end of the day, they ended up choosing all the rules that I would have set anyways, which was amazing for me. I could consider it a great victory. But more importantly, they had buy-in. They felt like they participated in that whole endeavor. Like, these weren't rules that dad just made up and da da da, right? These were rules that they participated in, that they agreed with, and that they felt were important to maintain, some decorum there at the home. So whenever I went upstairs and let's say, one of my sons had a paleta or something, I would tell him like, hey, what are you doing? Remember what you said about the paletas? And they said, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And they'd race down to the kitchen, eat their paleta as soon as they could, and come back upstairs, right? But it was the buy-in, it was them feeling a part of the process. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for the kids to have a say on that. And again, negotiate. Back to Mbato's point really quick, when kids feel involved in the process, they can really respect you a lot more, and they respect the process itself as well. That's really, I think, a big key, because I remember growing up myself, I was in the same environment where, I had zero voice. It was my dad's law and this and that, right? And I just felt the whole time like, oh man, I fucking hate this. I don't like this. I don't, this is not fair, and this and that. But I had zero say in anything like that. And now with my boys, the way we do things, they definitely have a say on it. And even in things like, playing video games, having sex, driving their own car, blah blah blah. I always, hey, here's what we do. What do you think? And so, and let them negotiate with me to terms that they understand that, hey, these are beneficial for myself, but also end up being beneficial for me. So I think that's a great opportunity there, Celeste, for you and your family to really kind of lay the groundwork for some buy-in, some negotiation, and letting the kids feel like they're a part of the process.
I'd like to add to that, because I agree with you. I was going to say the same thing, Rodrigo, because when you include the children, I feel like the outcome is a lot better and everybody walks away really happy. But one of the things that I think is important to include that I feel like sometimes parents are afraid to include is deciding which consequences are acceptable or not acceptable when children behave a certain way. For example, and this is something that happened in my home. My two girls in the phone, same thing like Jason. I didn't want them to have a phone until they were much older, but they got it earlier because my husband just didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. But one of the things that I made, one of the mistakes was that I would use the phone because I was so against it as always the go-to, the hey, you didn't do this, so you take this privilege is going to be taken away. And then we had to do a reset. And in the reset, we talked about what should I not do, what should they not do anymore as consequences, and I allowed them to decide. Okay, if you abuse your phone privileges, how would you like that consequence to come about? Like, what would you want it to be? We also eliminated certain words that they just absolutely hated hearing. Especially when we were giving them like one of those uh, when we were preaching to them because they had made a mistake, right? And so it's not just about resetting and saying, okay, well, from now on, you're not gonna do this anymore. You're gonna, now you're gonna have two chores instead of one, or by, whatever. So all of those little things, like the more detailed you can get, the better, because sometimes the little tiny things that happen are what you know they build on one another, and that is what creates a bigger problem. So before you have that reset meeting, I guess you can ask them, like, think of what things you'd like to change, or maybe ask it in a different way, like, what um what things make you anxious here at home that we have to do, because sometimes when you ask it one way, they might not really you get a different answer. So try that out too, because also depending on the maturity level and how well they articulate, they might not give you the answer that you think that you're looking for, or sometimes you find out that there's another underlying issue, and then you need to address that so that your reset works. Because when we don't take care of those micro problems and they're still existing, no matter how much you reset, if you didn't take care of them, they're going to continue to exist. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to add that.
I wanted to add
Oh,
something also.
no.
Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Jason, go.
Celeste, one thing that I know as a parent and as a single parent, and I also work in a blended family right now. One thing I can say is take an evaluation of your time and how you start your day, because, like, for me, it's like the demands of a parent and then the demands of our profession and then them. It's like when it has to be them, and by the time we're to them, we're at the lowest part of our energy day, and you're just trying to muster through like a marathon. But one thing that I would really, really strongly encourage is take an evaluation of making your personal self time early in the morning to be your absolute one time with you. So then by the time you're activated and you're awake before they are, and you greet them, think about how fresh you can provide an experience, because your work demands, no matter what your profession is, whether emails, calls, phone calls, appointments, chaos is chaos because we don't have a grip on where our presence is. And so when everything, there's always, hey, no matter where you go, there's a red flag and I need to get to my kid and I need to help them really see them. But then how do I have the energy? And it's like you want to give them kind of like a put off in a way, but then it's like, wait, I can't do that because if I do, there are bigger consequences at hand. So I would strongly suggest look about how you evaluate how you get to wake up and how you spend the first 30 minutes with just yourself, your own thoughts, not about their worries, not about concern about the house, because making that stronger you right now is going to be, it's like you're, that's the ground floor of your castle. You let it in and out, and you just build on that foundation because you are going to be the rock star to show up to them first, where they're smiling, hugging, not just going over their rules, because rules are guidelines. Just remember that. We have to get away from like, okay, break this rule, you get a punishment. No, they're the guidelines to helping them to becoming the person they need to be for them, not what we think they're going to be, what they need to be, because their demands now are different from the demands 30 years ago, 20 years ago of what are on kids. So take an evaluation of your time and your presence in the first 30 minutes of how you get to wake up the way you want to. And I bet more than likely how you address them is going to be completely different.
Can I say something? Wow,
Absolutely.
thank you, Christina. Yeah, that was definitely good there, Jason, about evaluating how you how you wake up and how you set the tone of your day will correlate to how you are able to pour into your children. That is great. Yeah, that's great. So something that somebody said earlier um, is about or first of all, I just need to clarify about when I said do children like us? Uh, just to clarify that I'm not talking about children being friends with us being friends with our children. Just in case somebody in the room feels mistook that as me saying that children have their own friends. They don't need us to be friends. They just need us to be parents to them. But they can still like us. Talking about having the children have a buy-in in what happens to them, that is really really a powerful strategy, because even us as adults, see, for me, I use that, that principle, the scripture that says do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I realized in my parenting that I was applying that to just adults, do unto them as they, adults. Uh, and when I realized that that applies to children too, that changed it, that shifted how I was relating to my son, because I realized that, okay, he's going to do what I expect him to be. I need to become that, so doing unto him what I would like for him to do unto me was my north star that helped me to navigate myself and to really recognize that sometimes I think I'm talking to adults in a more in a nicer way, And yet when I'm talking to my son, it was different. So I needed to make sure that I apply that principle in both directions. And so even when it came to trying to discipline and all of that stuff, I looked at what I want to be treated as with other adults. I take ownership in my behavior when an adult is letting me, like at work, is letting me to have control or make me feel like I have control over what is happening and the consequences. And so that applies to the child too. So if that child feels like they are involved in whatever the situation is, they are more inclined to take ownership, and it is easier, it's never easy, it is easier than to parent from that fair starting ground. I'm done talking. Thank you.
I'd like to reset the room for just a second. We have about 10 minutes. If there's anybody who'd like to ask a question in our last 10 minutes, please feel free to raise your hand and come on up, because we could use another question if you have one. And Celeste, with my 2 bits of what you're saying, if I were in your position, I would call a family meeting. I'd make sure that I had a lot of time, like maybe an hour for the conversation. In that I would present my meeting as, hey, we need to make some changes. This is what used to happen. I I don't know if you've been seeing it, but I think you have. We've been having some problems now that we're starting to get back to normal. Let's identify those problems. What are some things that we need to change? And instead of telling your kids what the problems are, have them come up with them on their own. Especially as your child gets older. I don't know if they're in their teens yet or adolescent years, but those kids don't like to be talked at. They want to come up with their own solutions. So you kind of have to probe the solutions out of the child and say, okay, so these are the problems. Let's say, tell me what you think the problems are. And then once you get those out on the table, you go, okay, so now how are we going to change this as a family so that we don't have those problems anymore? And then you go into the solutions portion. And then as you see with all of the suggestions that you were given today, the kids are part of their conversation. They have agency in what's happening. They're getting to contribute to what the new rules look like. And then after that, some kids need a contract in order to stick on board. Other kids don't. A verbal, hey, we got this, is fine. Some kids like it in written form. You could actually write it out and have everybody sign it as a family contract. It's another thing that a lot of educators do, but you could definitely do it at home. And then from there, part 2, also talk about what are the consequences of us not following these new rules. And that's the step that a lot of parents forget, is that they need to talk about what are the consequences if the new rules are broken, because kids will not only follow rules better if they know the consequences and they're part of the decision. So that's how you get them to follow the new rules and have some ownership in what the new rules are. But make sure the consequences part really is spoken about, and then hold steadfast. And then my last suggestion to you is you also have to walk the walk just like the kids. So if there are certain things like we're cutting down on electronics time, you're going to have to do it too, Celeste. You're going to have to also not get on the phone quite as much. You have to role model all of the rules that you want your kids to also follow. And that's going to be pivotal, because if you don't follow the same rules that you're asking your kids to do, they're just going to think that it's all crap. So that's my 2 bits on how I would handle that situation. And I totally hope that you got some good advice today, Celeste, and that answered your question.
I just want to thank you all. This was fabulous. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Again, anybody else have a question that they'd like to come up on stage for?
Yeah, it is that. Sorry, I'm sorry to jump in. Yeah, that was powerful there, Christina. It is that contradiction piece that sometimes shoots us in the foot with children. Is which this is why you see a lot of pastors' children go astray. Is because they see the gap between their parent at church and their parent at home, and so Uh, as soon as the family hits the church building, uh, the children look at the pastors and think, oh my goodness, we were just ripping our, they were just ripping our heads off in the car and at home, and here they are, hugging all these people and loving them. Where are these people? Where are these people at home? And so when children see a contradiction in what we tell them to do or we expect out of them and what we are doing in our own lives in front of them, that really does shoot us in the foot. And so, yeah, so definitely be what you expect your children to become.
That's right, Mabatu. If we don't have another particular question, I am going to pose a question just to end our time, and we'll go around to the moderators and see how you would answer this. And then Jason and Mabatu, if you'd like to also answer, you're welcome to do that. So I Googled some of the most popular questions that parents are Googling to get answers for online. And there is, of course, a plethora of them. But one of the ones that is on the top 10 list is, why doesn't my kid appreciate what they have? And so I thought that was an interesting question. How do you teach appreciation to your child? And I'll give you a second to think about this. I know, Rodrigo and Dali, it's a tough question, and I'm just like throwing it up on you. But if one of you wants to unmic, go for it.
No, you
Right.
simply take it away from them, and you chain them up, and you. No, I'm playing.
Rough
No,
parenting. The
That
tough
is
you
how
love.
you
my
know
parents taught me appreciation, for sure.
there is a paradox, right? When it comes to parenting, there's a big paradox where a lot of us grew up in circumstances that weren't best, right? But those same circumstances molded us and made us the people that we are. However, we don't want to necessarily to put our kids through those same experiences, right? Either being broke, having a tough childhood, maybe some type of abuse, whatever the case may be, right? We don't want to put our kids through that, but we want them to learn those lessons, right? So there's a paradox there for us as parents in trying to give our kids those qualities, those characteristics, without having them to go through the environment and the context for which we acquired those. So, for my advice for teaching your kids to appreciate things, for me, what's really always been beneficial is being honest with them, letting them know how much work it takes. I've taken my kids with me to work. Very very small gesture and stuff. But I remember one time when I was a bus driver at one point, and my oldest came with me. I was on my shift, and he came with me, and he was like, "Dad, what are we here?" I said, "Hey, I got a shift, man. I got to work." And he saw me interact and this and that, but it always stuck true with my son. He actually saw me working, right? And then when I was, when I got promoted and this and that and blah blah blah, he saw that level of work. He appreciated all that, and I'm really happy to say that he has that same mentality now. He's at Starbucks. He started off as a barista. Now he's an assistant manager, and he's now working his way to be a full the store manager and whatnot. I think the best things that we can do to show our kids appreciation is really show them what it takes, right? And let them know that, hey, you kind of got it easy, or I don't want to say like tell them that, but definitely remind them that, hey, there's certain things that you do have that not necessarily everybody grew up with, whether it's a video game, whether it's a vehicle, this and that. The last example I'll give is when I bought my son the car, and I, uh, I didn't get him like the brand newest one, but I got him something that was safe, that was reliable, and was mechanically sound. And then he wrecked it. And I was actually so yesterday I had a really rough day yesterday, but I was in my son's room, and I saw a small portion, like a 2-inch portion of the bumper to his car, and it's on his desk stand, on his computer, next to a picture of his girlfriend and some other stuff, right? And I hadn't seen that before, and it made me realize how he appreciated it. Like, yes, it's a memento, it's a little token, but he realizes, like, damn, man, I had a car and I messed up, and he appreciates that now. Just even keeping that little bumper piece or whatever on his desk is going to remind him and ground him, because when he gets his next vehicle, he's going to have to pay me for that one. That was our agreement. And he's fine with that, and he's kind of fixing his old car. He's kind of now, whatever the case may be with that. But I know that at the end of the day, he appreciated it, and he learned those lessons. And maybe it's a tough lesson, but going back to what I initially said, sometimes those tough lessons is really what molded us, what made us who we are, and gave us the characteristics that now we can share and imbue with others, especially when it comes to our kids.
I'd like to also respond to that. Because you have very, very good points, Rodrigo. Yeah. Sometimes it might also be because kids have a sense of autonomy, so they feel like, oh, I have to earn it myself. It's not, otherwise it's not the same. And the other thing too is that they might feel like whatever they have is conditional. So they might feel like, okay, well, my mom or dad gave me this iPhone, but I know it's just a way for them to, I guess, like control, or see where I'm at all the time, and I'm already like 18 years old, and I shouldn't, so they might feel like there's something tied to that, and so it's not a genuine thing that they have. Um, the other thing, of course, is entitlement, which can be, I guess, it can come about when they're used to having everything. One of the things that I hear a lot from parents is when they say, oh, I don't have any money. I don't have any money. We're on a tight budget. And then they go out and buy something that's super unnecessary. And, kids, no matter how young, they're noticing things. And they might say things like, well, if we didn't have money, then why did you just buy that? So they're noticing and they might think, okay, um, it's there's something there. Anyway, I'm going rabbit hole there. I'm going the other direction, and also, um, I think that it's important that when you notice that your kids are not appreciating something, you ask them and see if maybe they have a different answer. Because a lot of times we assume that they automatically know, and sometimes even they don't know. And it's okay to hear them say, "I actually don't know," and then you can say, well, let's explore that. Let's see why, because if there's something underlying there, we need to work on that because, say, I work so that, not just to provide, but because I enjoy doing it. And that's another point too, where sometimes kids don't enjoy what they have because they feel like they're the burden and you're only doing it because they have to. So those are my few points.
I'd just like to say that we can't, the number one thing that I read in quite a few different books is don't take away their obstacles because your obstacles may have been tougher. Their your obstacles may have been tougher, but theirs are more dynamic in this day and age. So when you understand, when you try to take on their responsibilities or their quests, what are you doing counterproductive? And then when you're spending time and they're looking at what you work on, like all my daughters know, it's like they see dad in his office and they're like, and my daughter just asked me the other day, it's like, Dad, how do you handle people yelling at you the way that I do? And I said, because I control my emotions and my output, they can't. And I said, you see me losing my time? And so my daughter called me, and back later after we had that discussion, she asked me that. And I said, you know what? I watched literally my little friends lose their, excuse my language, but shit over something really stupid they don't even control. Like it was about one girl liking a boy and he doesn't like her, but another friend of theirs want. And I'm like, oh, so how do you feel out of place? And she's like, I don't. I just think it's ridiculous. And I said, now remember that, when you remember your emotional space, people don't have leverage on you. But once you give it out, and I've heard her tell her little friends, her teenage friends, like, look, if you keep wanting all these petty, expensive things, do you have the job or does your mom and dad? And like, does your mom and dad ignore you? And my daughter come talk to me and she goes, Dad, you know what? Their parents don't even pay attention. They're doing lots of hood rat shit. And I'm like, okay. And so do you think I'm strict? And she's all, no, because I know they're going to end up pregnant sooner or later. And I was like, really? And so I let her tell me, but showing the example, like Rodrigo was saying, you show them the work, they'll see the value, eventually. And if they have to integrate their time into your work, that's teaching them even more because it's easier for us to lecture them and tell them what to do. But none of us learn that way. We learn by we do first, then we ask questions. And when we feel like, oh, I did that wrong, how do I do this a little better? That's learning. you know when the student's ready, the teacher does appear. So yeah.
Yes, that is so true. Yeah, that really is so true. Um, what I would ask, going back to that question that you asked, Christina from Google, parents asking why doesn't our children appreciate what they have? The question that I would ask is, what is it that are they not appreciating? Because oftentimes, uh, we we give our children whatever we give them as a compensation to compensate our lack of presence in their lives. So we shower them with all of this stuff, and of course business is killing it, making a lot of money, taking advantage of that, appealing to that guilt that we have. So then we go buying or doing all of this stuff. I mean, outside shelter and those bottom must-haves of needs, Maslow hierarchy of needs. The extra stuff, that is why parents complain, or why don't you appreciate all of this stuff? But is all of that stuff your way of compensating for your lack of presence in their lives? And so you them not appreciating that stuff says to you that you still have a long ways to go in being present in their life. Like it's not compensation enough. So, what is the reason why you feel that they need to appreciate it to that level that satisfies you? Is it because you want them to confirm to you that it's okay that you're not here? This toy here or this whatever here will take place of that, because many times our children need us. And so we because this is what I found. I was focused on being a good parent, and I would pray, Lord, help me be a good parent. I was focused on being a good parent until I realized that what does good even mean? Good in my mind was loaded with all my ideas of what good is. Part of it upbringing, and part of it what everybody else was saying good parenting is. But until I realized that no, I don't need to be a good parent. My son needs me to be a mother that he needs. And when I connected to what he needed, I realized that all of this other stuff was not even necessary as long as I met his needs of the mother that he needed out of me, not stuff. And so focusing on why are children not appreciating all the stuff that I have, what does that stuff mean to you? Is that stuff just your way of compensating your lack of presence in their children? Because that's not satisfying to them. What's satisfying to them is what they need, not what you think they need to compensate whatever you're guilty about. That is what I have to say to that. Thank you. I'm done.
And lastly, I don't think I need to add too much. Everybody said really awesome things with that. I think the only thing I have left is, again, the role modeling. Do you show appreciation outwardly to your lifestyle, to the things that you have? One way that I do this in my own family is during the summer, we go and do volunteer work, and we go to the less fortunate than us communities, and we get out there and work alongside them, whether it's picking up crap in the fields or feeding the homeless or whatever it looks like. I get my kids out there and living it for a few hours. So but it's doing it with them. We try to walk the walk with that, and then on a daily basis, showing that appreciation. Whether you show that through prayer or you show that through outwardly just saying thank you, or however you might do that, just that might be another way. Thank you so much for everybody coming into the room today. I want to remind everybody that next week I will not be here. So Rodrigo and Dali, next week is a week off. I'm going to Mexico to go visit my dad. So I'm taking the week off from my work. And but if you like this room and you'd like more, please, again, from me, you're going to go to the top up there. You're going to click on that app and download it. There's so many great things in there for you. Make sure that you press on all of our heads and follow us here. Come back to the room in a couple of weeks when we do this room again. And when we come back, it's Fridays noon Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be doing a room on power struggles and how to deal with power struggles between you and your child. So come check that out. It should be a great conversation. If there's ever a topic that you'd like to be heard here, just message us, message Rodrigo, message Christina, message Dali, and let us know that about that topic. We're open to other topics so that we can get your questions answered. And does anybody on the stage have anything else that they'd like to promote or anything like that? I know, Dali, you have a podcast.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, actually, the link is in my Instagram bio, but I just launched it. And I'm also looking for guest speakers. So if you're interested and you have something of value to share with parents, whether it's self-care or something for the kiddos, please reach out to me. And you can find the podcast. It's called the Dali Talks Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And thank you.
Oh, thank you, Christina, for the opportunity. Yeah, no, I have two rooms that I run during the week, Tuesdays and Fridays. So today I have a room under my club, Intuitive Parenting, and the title of it is Surviving African and Caribbean Parents. It is in quotes when you see it because it is a room that I came upon, and it was young adults, my children, like young adults, people, young adults who could be my kids, um, complaining, not complaining, but sharing their pain and their struggles being raised in these communities in North America. So their parents are immigrants, just like me. I'm African and I raised my son in North America. So the Friday room is for my peers, the parents, us, to come and talk about our struggles and how we can bring healing to our young adults who are trying to survive us. So unfortunate. Surviving parents. Those two words should not go together. Thank you so much.
I just want to say I have two podcasts. Really, I have tomorrow morning. I'm going to calendar it. It's Man to Man, Voices and Stories. It's about men becoming better men and leaders and individuals, and how to focus, their misguidance into guidance that works for them and their families. And then I also do a rise and grind, but I distribute man to man pretty much through Clubhouse. But my rise and grind, I started off in Podbean, so I want to draw a little attention to Christina. As I just noticed, we just got recently connected on Podbean, so that's a great podcasting forum to really get into, and it can really spread your brand pretty far, for either free or to some cost. But I just want to say that, giving Christina, her props. I just seen, her podcasting station on Podbean, and I'm also on there, and that's where I do my Rise and Grind, which distributes through Spotify. Um, what is it? iHeartRadio, Pandora, Apple Podcasts. I mean, it just gives so many distributions. So if you're trying to start a podcast and you're trying to connect where great people can talk and, hear recorded or non-recorded, it's a great platform to go to.
Rodrigo, you have anything?
Yes, I have a podcast. I have several podcasts, and I do a radio show that I produce in Houston. Two shows that I do on 90.1 KPTFM. um, Nuestra Palabra, Latino Writers Have Our Say with Tony Diaz, as well as Latino Politics and News with Tony Diaz. They both appear again on 90.1. They also have their own podcast. I also share a podcast with Wendy Velos. It's the Social Level Up podcast. And basically, we talk about all things entrepreneur, but also with a social angle as far as making sure that we give back to our community. And that said, I'm really excited to just be here. Christina welcomed me into her fold as far as the Impactful Parent is concerned, with her podcast and also with her app, and just creating this space here, along with Dali, to be able to have these conversations. I think it's really important. It's part of what Amigos is about. Last night we had an interview with the cast of Promised Land, the show that's on ABC Hulu, and we have rooms where we network, and then we have rooms like this where we talk with parents, about parents, from parents, and it's really just I'm really humbled to be a part of these conversations that we have on here, and it's always about elevating the community. So I want to just appreciate Dali for just being here with us, as well as all the folks that also come through. Jason, Mambato, and of course Christina for really leading the way when it comes to these conversations. Really appreciate the energy and the impact that you have when it comes to parenting. Thank you, Christina.
Oh, thank you, Rodrigo. And yeah, the Amigos interview last night with the cast is phenomenal. Go check out that replay. It's on the Amigos Club. Make sure you push up that little casita on the top so you get all the info of when we have rooms here. Even if you're not from the Latinx community, you are welcome here because we welcome everybody. So make sure that you go ahead and push on the casita and follow. There's so many great things within this platform, which is why I'm hosting it here, right? So I mean, it's my pick, so I'm telling you, it's great. So I think other than that, we're all ready to go. Don't forget, next week we won't be here, but I hope to see you the week after. And have an amazing week, parents. You got this.
Bye,
Thanks. Yeah,
everybody. Thank you.
have a great one.
Don't negotiate with a terrorist, y'all.